આ લોકો બહુ જ હેલ્પફુલ છે, બહુ જ એમ આમ સામેથી આવીને હેલ્પ કરે કે તમારે કંઈ હેલ્પની જરૂર છે કે શું, બધી રીતે એમ બહુ હેલ્પફુલ છે. આવી ગઈ છે 239 વાળી બસ હું લઈશ અને મારીશ 2-3 કલાકનો ઘુમરો. બધા ઇન્ડિયન ઉતર્યા છે આમાં વધારે. તો હું બેસી ગયો છે બસમાં અને આપણે કરશું બધા ઇન્ડરબર્ગ, આખી ઇન્ડરબર્ગને બસ ટૂર. ચાલો એન્જોય કરો, શું છે જોઈએ. શરૂઆત થઈ ગઈ છે, ચાલો જુઓ.
We are at start, which is number 1, and there are 16 different stops along the way. And just in case you're in any doubt, I actually did have somebody ask me the other day, you're in Scotland. I was actually asked, what country am I in? You're in trouble if you don't know what country you're in. Anyway, our tour this afternoon is going to take us through the different parts of Edinburgh, because Edinburgh is really a city of two halves. Town and so there is the old town over on your left-hand side, separated from us by the railway station, the Waverley Station, named after the novels of Sir Walter Scott. And then on this side, we have the new town. Now the new town is still pretty old. It was planted in 1767, so it's actually older than the United States of America. But nevertheless, it's a lot newer than the old town, which goes back about 1,000 years. And we're going to explore. But we didn't have to do that any longer. So this area here, which was completely virgin territory at the time, was decided to plant a new city here. And the young man who designed this was called James Craig. He was only 24 years of age when he designed it, and he basically made it a grid. So there are 3 streets going east to west. Princess Street, George Street that we're just crossing over in a moment, and then Queen Street further on. Other roads obviously cutting north to south, and at each end
તો બેન તમને બધી માહિતી આપે છે ઇંગ્લિશમાં,
St Andrew Square at this
શું
end,
છે અહીંયા શું નહીં.
and what was supposed to be St George Square at the other end, but later became Charlotte Square. When we realised that when the council spent about £2.5 million renovating it, and there were different pathways created into the centre, as you can see, lots of places to sit around. There's a very lovely, peaceful, reflective pool there. And sometimes, particularly during the month of August, there may be performers come and act out some of their show in the square as a little taster to encourage you to go and see the actual full show in the Fringe. Andrew Square, stop number 2. Originally, St Andrew Square was entirely therapy. All you need to do is head straight in front of us down to through the pedestrianised walkway there, and that will take you to the St James Quarter, which is our newest shopping mall in the city. Now, as we come around the corner here, you will see on your left-hand side that there is a bank just coming up in this gap. And this originally was where there was a house called Dundas House, and that was not meant to be there at all. It was supposed to be a church. The idea was that in each square of the new town there would be a church, but Lawrence Dundas wanted to build his mansion there, so he got in before anybody could do anything about it, and they never managed to build the church there at all. All the eateries are over on your left-hand side now, and then if you look at the lights over to your left, you'll see a rather impressive building with the word Jenner's at the top of it. Get in. Once it was in place, men would then abseil from the ceiling to try and put the lights on. There's actually a youth who has his dog tucked under his feet And if you're interested, the door was Toby. But James Clerk Maxwell, who's heard of James Clerk Maxwell? Einstein. In fact, at one point, Albert Einstein was asked if he thought that he was standing on the shoulders of Sir Isaac Newton, and he said, no, I am standing on the shoulders of James Clerk Maxwell. Now, Maxwell's claim to fame was that he came up with the theory of electromagnetic radiation, which led to things like sonar and radar, and right up to the current time with things like Wi-Fi. So, in the Newtown, this is the one that looks most like it did when it was originally built. So he wanted to create more than anything else. As you come along here on your left-hand side, you'll see a building with 3 statues out the front, and that is the Royal College of Physicians. These 3 statues are Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine and healing, and Hygeia, the god of cleanliness. And the Royal College is one of 3 organisations in Britain which controls all the different specialities within the medical profession. Now, here in Scotland, we tend to think that there is one kind of cure-all medicine. It takes the form of a sort of amber-coloured liquid which you put into a tumbler and add water or ice to. My husband says you don't really need to do that. It's far better just leaving it neat. It's known as the water of life, aqua vita, you might say, but here in Scotland we use a Gaelic expression, which is uska beitha, and that basically means whiskey. So if you're wanting to try any, then on this next set of houses, you'll notice one with lots of flowers and greenery outside, kind of kaleidoscopic colours in the window, and that is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. So it's just coming up here on your left-hand side. You do not need to be a member of the society in order to go in and taste some of their malts. Just in the bar on the ground floor. So you might want to remember that for later on. Coming back to more traditional medicine, on the next section of this street, you have the home of James Young Simpson. Now, coming along here, if you look out for a building with a bright blue door and a white surround with pink flowers in the window, just literally coming up now. Thanks, Miro. So that was the home of James Young Simpson, and he was a brilliant doctor who came up with the very first anaesthetic that was effective on human beings, chloroform. Now, this was a game changer because up until this point, there really wasn't anything. Can you imagine undergoing surgery, wide awake, with no form of pain relief? Oh, doesn't bear thinking about. So when he discovered chloroform, and Queen Victoria tried it in the birth of her 8th child, she was so pleased that she knighted him, and he became the very first Scottish physician ever to be knighted. Now, this street here, North Castle Street, is so named because of its view of the castle. If you're wondering what it would cost to live here in the new town, then, for example, in this street at the present time, there is a 2-bedroom flat for sale, which does not have a garden, it doesn't have a garage, doesn't even have a parking space, 2 bedrooms, and it's on the market as offers over £850,000. And it'll probably go for about £1 million. Houses tend to go for about 20% more. Now, as we head along to the end of George Street here, we are coming to the other square in the new town, and this is Charlotte Square. There is a stop on the other side of the square if anyone's interested in getting off here. Charlotte Square is generally regarded as being the finest remaining Georgian square anywhere in the world. And this was designed by Robert Adam, and it very much looks the way it did when it was first built. And we are at pieces now. The centre of the square is a private square still to this day. Now, if you look off to your right, just by the lights there, before we come onto the square itself, you will see a blue door. And that is the door leading into what was the birthplace of Alexander Graham Bell, the man who invented the telephone. actually just born Alexander Bell. But for his 8th birthday, and this is a bit odd, I think, his father asked him what he would like for his birthday, and he said, "I'd like a middle name." I don't think you'd find many children nowadays asking for that. But, spoiler alert, it was Graham. Now, if you look to your left-hand side just now, you will see all these lovely lights outside the houses. And these are the original street lights. They would have been lit with whale oil to start with, then gas, and finally electricity. So we're coming to stop number 3 in Charlotte Square. A good stop for the Georgian house directly across on your right, where you can go in and see what life would actually be like to live here in the 1820s. Anybody wanting off at stop? Yes, somebody wanting off here, thanks. No. And every now and again there's a little flat stone, and these were called mounting steps, and they were to help men climb onto their horses more easily. The fact that the pavement was elevated was to allow ladies to come out of their carriages late at night and step onto the relatively clean pavement and avoid the bottom of their dresses becoming dirtied from the road itself. Charlotte was the wife of George III. He was the king when the new town was formed, and so this square is named after her. You may well be aware of Queen Charlotte if you've been watching Bridgerton or the spin-off series Queen Charlotte. It's that Charlotte I'm referring to. Now, as you come around the corner, look to your right-hand side and you'll see a red building saying the Pandan Sons. It says it's a barber shop, immediately on your right there. It's not. It's a speakeasy. It's designed to look like a barbershop, but you will actually get some very good cocktails in there. And in fact, just the week before last, it was voted the 2nd best cocktail bar in the world. It's been gradually rising up through the rankings. Last year it was 5th, but now it's 2nd. You never know. Next year we might hit the top. Some rather unusual cocktails. It opens at 3 o'clock. Influential for various other countries throughout the world, including America. The White House was built in 1792, and it was directly based on the neoclassic style of the buildings here in Edinburgh. Straight ahead of us, with his back to us, is William Pitt the Younger. Now, he was the youngest ever Prime Minister of Great Britain. He was only 24 when he took office, so I don't know what you were doing when you were 24, but I certainly don't think I could have been running a country. Certainly not one that was at war, because he kind of got the tail end of the Napoleonic Wars, which he dealt with efficiently, and the cost of them he tried to settle against the taxes that he raised. By imposing taxes on windows and servants and so forth. Stop number 4 in Frederick Street. Anyone needing off for stop 4? Yes, somebody's wanting off here, Miro. Thanks, bye-bye. Right just now.
તો હર 10 મિનિટે વિડિયો નવો પાર્ટ આવશે 10 મિનિટ અને 10 મિનિટે એટલે તમારે ટાઈમ બચી જાય જોવા માટે બરાબર 10 મિનિટે વિડિયો બદલી જશે તો આપ સૌને પ્રણામ જય માતાજી જય દ્વારકાધીશ જય સિયારામ મળીએ પાછા નવા પાર્ટ 2 માં પાર્ટ 3 પાર્ટ 4 પાર્ટ 6 એવી રીતે અલગ અલગ પાર્ટ હશે.
So just factor that in if you're making plans. Now, Edinburgh Castle is sitting on an extinct volcano that is called Castle Rock, and in front of it are Princess Street Gardens. But originally these were not gardens, this was a loch. They had flooded the valley here to create a huge expanse of water which would protect the castle from invasion from this side. For the second time, she was a divorcee and therefore in the Church of England could not remarry. But there was no such prohibition in the Church of Scotland, so she came here and married a man who was much, much younger than she was. And let me tell you, it caused quite a stir at the time. Now, coming along to the end of the street here, you will see that there is another church, and this is St. John's Church. This is an Episcopalian church. They do a tremendous amount of work with refugees and asylum seekers who come to the city, and recently, of course, have been helping Walker Blend of Whiskey. If, however, you go round the corner from there to the right, you'll find a pub called the Angel's Share. Now, that is also referring to whiskey, because the Angel's Share is the name given to the whiskey that evaporates into the air during the distilling process when the whiskey is put into the casks and left there to mature. Some of it always kind of evaporates and seeps out and goes heavenward, and therefore the Angel's Share.
આવું બધું છે અહીંયા છે ને કાસ્ટર બહુ જૂના જૂના છે અને આ ઓલી જોન વિસ્કી બનાવે છે એનું છે આ બિલ્ડિંગ
So as we come around here, you're getting a glimpse now of the entrance to the fair in full swing today. And just a little bit further on, we have got our stop, which is stop number 5. Now, this magnificent red building that you're seeing in front of you here is the Caledonian Hotel. This was a railway hotel originally. There was a railway to begin with at both ends of Princes Street. Now there's only at the far end. But the Caledonian Hotel is another 5-star hotel in the city. Various different celebrities and members of the royal family have stayed there in the past, including the Queen Mother, Elizabeth Taylor, Gene Kelly, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all sorts of big names. So we're coming to stop number 5 in Lothian Road. Would anybody like off at stop number 5? Nobody? Okay. So over on your left hand side now, you will see just ahead of us a round tower, and these are watchtowers, and they are all over the city in the cemeteries, and they were put here in the 18th century to look out for grave robbers, because grave robbing was a big problem. The medical school needed more bodies. They were getting students. We were teaching them by using real bodies to practice surgical skills on. But they didn't have enough, so people would come into the graveyards and they would steal bodies. And if you wanted to protect your loved one's body, you would employ somebody to stay in that tower overnight and keep a lookout and protect them. It's where we get the expression, the graveyard shift, for anyone whose job means that they have to stay awake all night, even if it is no longer in a graveyard. Oh, lovely breeze there. It's very, very hot behind all this glass. Now, on your left-hand side, you can see the Traverse Theatre. That's very modern, contemporary productions tend to be put on. You then have the Usher Hall, which is the main concert hall of the city. Fantastic acoustics in there, all built with money given to the city by Andrew Usher in 1898, because he wanted to create a space which would attract musical artists from all over the world. Now, if you look over to your right-hand side, to the end of the hedge, just where that chap's having a sandwich there, you'll see a statue called Woman and Child. And that was put there in the 1990s as an act of solidarity with the people of apartheid, people of South Africa during apartheid. Now, as we turn the corner, we're coming into a street called Bread Street. Now, in London, there is a street called Bread Street where all the bakers were. We don't actually have any written proof that that is why this street gets its name, but we know that there were baker shops here, and we also know that a number of the streets in Edinburgh bear names which are very logical because of what went on there. Candlemaker Row, for example, we know candle makers had their premises there. So there's a pretty good chance that Bread Street here also is because this is where the bakers would be. And it kind of makes sense because it was just outside the city walls. regularly caused fires to erupt. And in order to protect people, it would be a good idea to have them slightly removed from where the main population was. And so that might be an explanation for why this street has its name. Along on your right hand side, you'll shortly see a hotel called Monboddo, and that is where there used to be a cooperative. Now, a cooperative was basically a kind of supermarket where the employees took a share of the profits. And it was from here that the city's milk would be delivered. And it was here actually that Mr. James Bond, Sean Connery, had a job of delivering milk. It is actually one of the guides within the bus tours whose aunt quite specifically remembers every morning opening the door to find Sean Connery standing there handing her a pint of milk. Obviously, he wasn't famous at the time, but still a rather pleasant wake-up call in the morning, I would have thought. Now, up to your left-hand side, you get another lovely view of the castle in a moment or two, because we're coming into the Grass Market. And the Grass Market is running parallel with the Grass Market is running parallel with the Royal Mile. It is kind of the equivalent of Princes Street Gardens on the other side of the castle. So this was forged by glaciers which came through the city during the last ice age and carved valleys through the volcanic rock which had been created by the eruptions 350 million years ago. Now, the Grass Market is a very, very popular place for drinking, having something to eat, and it's a bit of a sun trap. You can just sit there and enjoy kicking back and watching the world go by. This shop on your right-hand side, Mary's Milk Bar, is the #1 ice cream shop in the whole of Scotland. We have some people wanting off, Miro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Last stop.
No, that's stop 9, I guess. Okay, no problem at all. So this is stop 6, folks, for the Grass Market. Yes, I do indeed.
Another big hill. I'm afraid. The castle is on a hill, so no matter which way you come to it, you have to walk up a hill. Sorry.
So, up to the left-hand side, this is Victoria Street, and this is often regarded as being the inspiration for Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter books. Full of lovely little shops and cafes there, painted buildings, as you can see, and actually 2 levels. Now, if you were to go up that street, at the top, if you turn left and then very quickly left again, you'd be on the Royal Mile. So I mentioned a moment or two ago a street called Candlemaker Row, and we're actually just about to come into it just now. This, of course, is where the candle makers all were. Now, if you are thinking to yourself, oh, well, this would be a rather nice place, a pleasant smell hanging in the air all the time, think again. Candles used to be made from tallow, and tallow was basically animal fat. So when they were burnt, it would not at all be a pleasant smell. Now, there is a graveyard on your right-hand side, and this is Greyfriars Graveyard. Across from us is the museum. You'll notice that there is a bit sticking out directly in front of us, and it looks a bit like the drawer of a filing cabinet. And that is exactly what it's supposed to look like. The idea is that we're trying to cram the museum full of interesting things, and it is indeed a very good place to visit. We'll be coming round by that a little bit later on. Now, this is part of Edinburgh University campus that we're approaching here. Edinburgh University is the 4th oldest university in Scotland. It dates back to 1582, and this round building immediately in front of us here, that is the McEwan Hall, where the students of the university graduate. Now, just behind us is Potter Row, and it was in that area that John Logie Baird, the inventor of the television, had his workshop basically, and that's where he lived. Now you will notice all around here these signs that have been erected, the Gilded Balloon. These are all places where you can go and see some of the shows that are on in the Edinburgh Festival. Now coming along here on your left-hand side, just after the building, is an entranceway down to the meadow. Circus acts are performing down there just now, and it was where the South Loch used to be. I mentioned the Nor Loch in Princes Street Gardens, but there was also a south one, and that was where the city got most of its drinking water. The building on your right-hand side is George Heriot School, which is celebrating its 400th birthday this year. It's sometimes regarded as being the inspiration for Hogwarts Academy. That is largely due to the fact that it looks like that, and also J.K. Rowling sent her own children to the school. But if it's by appearance, then most of the private schools in Edinburgh look like that, so any one of them could be the inspiration for it. Now coming along to Lauriston Place here, this tends to be a stop for hotels rather than anything. I can't believe what you used to do if you had a fire in your building. Many of the buildings were made of wood, and they planted long ladders all around the city with long poles with hooks on them at the end. And if your building went on fire, you were supposed to grab one of the ladders, put it against your burning building, climb up with the hook, and try to pull some of the burning embers away to stop the fire from spreading. Very, very primitive. Eventually, over the years, and when I say over the years, I mean during the next 200 years, they decided that maybe water would be a good way of putting out a fire. So they started to build wells all around the city, and then people were encouraged to actually have buckets of water in their homes. You'll now see on the right-hand side what is clearly a fire station, and this was built in 1900s. However, before that, in 1824, there had been a devastating fire in Edinburgh, and it had rampaged through the city for 5 days, eventually being put out by torrential rain. But it made them realise they needed a better system of dealing with fires. And so a man by the name of James Braidwood started the very first public fire station anywhere in the world, right here in Edinburgh. And so it is celebrating its 200th birthday this year. If you'd like to know more about that, there is actually an exhibition in the Museum of Edinburgh, which is free to go into, and that is in the Royal Mile. I'll point it out when we get to it a little bit later on. James Braidwood actually is credited with more or less writing a rule book on firefighting. So he went from perhaps the worst people fighting a fire to the best. Now we're coming up to stop number 8. If you're wanting to head back to the New Town again, you could do so from here. Otherwise, we're going to keep climbing up towards the castle. We're all good? Now the castle is gearing up for the tattoo this evening. The tattoo is held in the Castle Esplanade. You will see in a moment or two a lot of seating that's been erected up high to your left, and that is for those who are coming to see the spectacle. The tattoo will go on every single day, whether it is raining or the sun is shining, whether it's snowing, whatever, it will go on. And it's basically a demonstration by various military bands from all over the world who are marching in perfect synchronicity to the beat of the drums or the bagpipes, and it's a really quite spectacular show. If you're able to pick up a ticket for it, please do go along. Don't try and spend your money on a really expensive ticket to get a better seat. I don't think there is any seat there that's bad. Basically, the higher up you are, the better to look down on what is going on.
Thank you.
So we are coming to stop number 9 now. And stop number 9 is just before we come into the Lawn Market. We're not allowed to do that at the moment because of the festival. So we're just going to pull in here. Did I see somebody wanting, are you wanting to go off? Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you. Right then. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We recommend a place down in Princes Street.
Okay.
It's called Romaine and Patterson. It's right next to Marks and Spencer's.
I don't know.
At the end where the bus started,
Okay.
at the Waverley Station end.
Okay. There's a shop called Marks and Spencer's, and Romaine and Patterson is right next to it.
Okay.
And let me just double check here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Romaine and Patterson offer 10% discount to our customers.
Okay.
So they sell all the stuff I've mentioned, foodstuffs like shortbread, whiskies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're very helpful if you're wanting to do a bit of research about looking for a particular thing.
Okay.
So I would suggest going there as a starting point anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have one of these?
No,
No, let me get you one of those.
Thank you.
Extremely busy at the moment, full of people who are here to see various artists who are performing in the streets. A piper over on the left hand side there, welcome us in. Castle is up to your left. And here's the rest of the Royal Mile. There's someone set up on the street here gathering a crowd around them, and I cannot believe they are being allowed to do that. This is the road. And people are just stepping out, oblivious. The building direct spire and the rather elaborate top to it is St Giles Cathedral. And the spire is supposed to look like the Scottish crown. If you want to compare them, go into the castle and you'll see the real article and you can see how like the two are. So it's a bit full of history, telling you what it will be like here in the Royal Mile in the 15th, 16th and the 20th century, depending on which level of the building you are exploring. Now, as far as the festival is concerned, the population of Edinburgh doubles. It's about 550,000. You're looking very worried. You're thinking, well, why did we come to Edinburgh just now? But it's a fantastic atmosphere. Normally, I say the population would be about 550,000. In the next couple of days, it will reach something like 1. So we are now leaving the Royal Mile momentarily and coming into George IV Bridge. Now, this was named after George IV, who visited the city 1822. Hugely important visit because no reigning monarch had visited anywhere in Scotland for nearly 200 years by the time he came. And more importantly, Sir Walter Scott persuaded him to wear a tartan, a kilt. Now, that was quite radical because the Jacobite rebellions had taken place in the early 1700s, and as a consequence of their failure, the English had hit the Highlands very hard, and one of the rules was that you were not allowed to wear tartan. So by 1822, to get the king to wear tartan was really quite an achievement. And George loved it. He embraced the whole thing. He loved being feted and fawned over. And a number of places were named after him. Statues were erected. And of course, this bridge, it refers to him as well. You'll see, just looking down to the left, that we're quite high up on this bridge. And now to Chamber Street. And we will be approaching stop number 10 in a moment. And this is for the National Museum of Scotland. A free museum, huge museum. Somebody asked me, how long would it take to visit here? I think maybe 2 to 3 weeks might do it. There's just so much to see here, and it's free, and it's cool. So you might want to get out of the humidity a wee bit and go in there to see what they have to offer. Station which prosecutes crime in Scotland. You can see the top of the building has a kind of crown on the top of it. So this is stop number 10 for the National Museum. Anybody wanting off at stop 10? No? All right, now let's see what's going on here. What's this? Oh, he's still this guy with the juggling. I presume he's going to climb up that ladder and juggle from the top of it. Now, as we continue down here, you will notice that the building on the right-hand side is very Georgian in its appearance, and that is very evident from the number of windows that you can see. Now, if you look at the very end of the building, on the top level and the middle level, you'll notice something a bit strange about the windows as we get closer to this. One of them was that symmetry was all important, but they might have wanted stairs at this end of the building, and therefore they didn't want you seeing the underside of that, so they would just create false windows to give the impression of it being symmetrical, but covering up the thing they didn't want you to see. Or it might be to do with a window tax. I mentioned earlier that William Pitt imposed a number of taxes to recoup the losses after the Napoleonic Wars, and one of them was on windows. You were only allowed a certain number, and then every one you had after that was taxed quite heavily. But if they weren't real windows, if they were just painted on, well, there was no tax associated with that. So they were able to kind of cheat the system. There's always a loophole somewhere that somebody can get through. You can see that again across the street, just above Blackwell's. You can see the kind of window frame there, and all that's different between that and what we see at the end of the old college is that they haven't actually painted the windows on above Blackwell's. Blackwell's is a very good bookseller, by the way, if anybody is into their reading. It's a very nice bookshop. Quite often you get unusual books there. Recently I bought a book called Kane's Jawbone. Kane's Jawbone is the oldest murder weapon in the world that we know of, and it's a very unusual book because it's only written on 100 pages. Type is only on one side of the page. And the thing about the book is that all the pages are in the wrong order. So you have to disassemble the book and try to work out the order that they should be in, and then try to solve the 6 murders that the story tells you about. And if you succeed in doing that, you might win a prize of £15. Woo-hoo! Don't spend it all in the one shop. I think you should get a lot more than that if you've gone to all that trouble. Now this is the South Bridge, and the South Bridge is the longest of all the bridges in the city. What is particularly interesting about it is the fact that it is said to be unlucky and it is said to be haunted. When they were first opening this bridge, the oldest woman in Edinburgh was given the privilege of being the first woman to cross the bridge. But 2 days before the event, she died. They were so insistent that she be the first person to cross the bridge, they actually took her across in her coffin. But then everything that happened after that was kind of seen as not a good thing was put down to the fact that the bridge must be cursed. And in fact, a lot of paranormal societies from all over the world come to Edinburgh to go underneath the bridge and do whatever they do. I don't quite know how you manage to establish if there's paranormal activity or not. It seems to be a kind of random thing. I have been underneath the bridge. It's quite an interesting tour, telling you about the history. Didn't personally feel anything untoward, but you never know, you might. Now we're just coming up on your left-hand side to Hunter Square. There's usually somebody else entertaining there. There may be, there's somebody there, I don't know quite what he's doing. But this is what you need to do. You just need to walk about, stop, have a look. If this doesn't interest you, walk on, find something else. And then you really get into the spirit